Are there any areas, and you and I talked about this briefly, any categories that we don't have, period, and that we should consider?
Not that, nothing struck me as I went through it. And I went through it again this morning before, to be ready when I came out here tonight. And there was nothing that that you don't have that I see
as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole, that I've seen, routinely in other charters or no.
I may have a charter that's out of date, I don't know.
Let me give you this.
Because I have a 2B here that I have a question on that may not even be a question anymore.
You have the old one.
Yeah, dealing with open meetings and
yeah, that changed in the 2011 election.
If that's changed, that's a moot point at this point.
Yeah, and that's why, that's highlighted in mine too, and I know I'm looking at the old version.
Because that's the only thing I had that highlighted. You hit too, and everything else was about the same.
Now, if you look at the current version, that will probably, I suspect it will address whatever your comments were.
Can you explain the difference for me between ordinances and resolutions? Because I noticed, going back to this 2.06,
yep.
And I know we're not getting really specific, but, ordinances and resolutions each are required to be read on two separate meeting dates, two separate occasions and everything.
Yep. I'll just tell you.
Okay. I hear a lot of meetings right here. It's an emergency, and I'm wondering if some of those things like contracts, are those resolutions?
There is, the way your charter is set up, there is really no difference between an ordinance and a resolution. Okay. And I'll tell you, that's the same way it is in Mason, same way it is in Waynesville. Although I will tell you, it's completely different in Springdale. Springdale's very specific. But I will tell you, in general, ordinances are what you do. For the places that distinguish between the two, ordinances are what are generally used to do things that have that are of a permanent nature. Like if you're going to adopt a section in the code book, you're going to enact a new traffic law, you're going to do something that's going to be of a long-standing nature is an ordinance. And the things that are
like a contract.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Like I live in Montgomery, city of Montgomery. If they were going to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the company to pave the streets, they do it by resolution because it's of a limited nature. It authorizes the manager to sign something, and then that's that. If they were going to adopt a new section of their code, they would do it by ordinance because their charter draws a distinction between the two things. Yours doesn't. A lot of times
Springdale do the same thing?
No, Springdale is different. They draw, there's a distinction, and it's a distinction that matters in Springdale because ordinances have to be read on 2 occasions and have a 30-day referendum period unless done by an emergency. Resolutions in Springdale only have to be read once and they are effective immediately. But they also, generally, the only thing they do as a resolution, or like from every once in a while, the last one I'm remembering is they did a resolution expressing city council's, basically their displeasure with the state's concept on uniform income tax, or whatever the state's been talking about centralized collection of municipal income tax. Well, Springdale didn't like that one bit, so they did a resolution expressing their distaste for that and sent it off to their...
So they took a stand.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's what resolutions are for, to express the intent of council on something.
So that,
recognizing public servants.
Yes.
And that wouldn't necessarily cover, for example, the manager wanting to, if we had grant money that has a time attached to it and hey, I can get this contract and get these 20 trees cut down or something, just a real quick thing, that wouldn't be a resolution then, or it could be.
Well, under your charter, it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter, either
It
way,
doesn't
you're taking
matter.
the same amount of time,
Mhm.
okay.
What they often do is when they're passing an ordinance, sometimes they'll look at you and say, is this a resolution or an ordinance? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
once in a
and-
while, I
and
mean,
it
we do,
doesn't-
we do try to differentiate,
Mhm.
but, you know.
It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because the way, I mean, and that's like that in a lot of places.
Mhm.
It
And
was something that
it would
used to have.
eliminate, if ours was similar to Springdale's, it would eliminate an awful lot of the emergency ordinances,
Mhm.
because almost all the emergency ordinances for contracts,
Because there's a time.
because there's a time
Yeah,
frame, the
there's
bid's
a
only good for
deadline.
X number of
Exactly.
days. And so,
That's what
Yeah.
I noticed, and
Well,
that's why
right, I
that kinda
mean-
actually drew my attention to this when I was,
I'll tell you, when you look at, and I go to an awful lot of council meetings, but for example, Waynesville does, I mean, they don't have certainly the amount of legislation, but almost everything gets 2 readings, and rarely is anything adopted as an emergency. It's just different, it's a matter of timing generally on things, but the way your charter is now, it doesn't matter if you call it an ordinance or if you call it a resolution, they still have the same requirements, 2 readings, 30-day waiting period, unless you do it as an emergency. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because that's how, most of the places I
It's a
represent.
check and
that's how
balance
they do
kind
it.
of thing, or it gives time for things to be. One of the things that I remember is when Dave had been here for a long time, council had a lot of long-term members on when I came on. And like Cliff Rothram was kind of a financial expert, and so I think over that long haul of a lot of, uniformity in leadership, they were good at anticipating what was coming up. They knew ahead of time that ordinances had to be out there in time to do this and this and this, and so they paced it better, I think. And I think when you have shorter term council members and shorter term and new leaders and so on, you get a lot of emergency things because things sneak up on them, and they don't see it coming, whereas the people that were here for years kind of were, I used to accuse them of being on automatic pilot, but it was because they knew their job, they knew the rhythm of the year, and
But
so.
in our process, and I should know the answer, I apologize. We have 3 council members elected in one election, and then 1 in the subsequent 2-year election?
No,
Three.
no, it's
3 and
3
3.
and 3.
It's 3
That
and
was
3.
in the first
That
book
was
that
the
you
very
got,
first
to
one.
get it in order. That's
That
what
was
they
when it
did.
first started, yeah,
Okay.
when the charter was first in that. Anything else that we would need to talk to Jeff about?
I'm happy to answer anything else. One other thing I'll tell you, because this just reminded me, and it's something we did in Waynesville, was that from time to time, as changes were being discussed or proposed among the commission, I wanted to be clear that, part of my job as the law director, when you read the charter, is that I represent the council and all the boards and the commissions. So part of my job is to represent this commission. So as you're working through your process and you have questions, you guys can decide how you want to do it, whether you funnel them through Chris or however, but I'm a resource
Okay,
as you go through this process.
that's good,
So it's
yeah. We
as someone
appreciate that.
said, because when it's all said and done.
You're the one that has to defend it.
Yeah, right. So I'd rather you ask me ahead of time.
So you can head us off at the
Yeah,
pass.
yeah.
Do any of the other communities have anything in their charter about how often they review, like every 10 years or
Mhm.
something like that?
Yeah.
As part of the,
Yes, Waynesville, in fact, and I don't remember if it's 5 or 10, but their charter specifically says that every X number of years, whether it's 5 or 10, I forget what it is, that they're they have to convene a charter review commission.
Things don't change that much in 5 years, but every 10 years, you know.
Right.
I'd say no more than 15, because after that, there's enough wrinkles that come up.
Yeah.
Right, and yours doesn't have anything, it just says when the mayor.
Well, I would say, kind of in defense of council, that probably every 5 years, we would say, you know, do we need to do anything with the charter? And we were supposed to review it every year. At that time, we'd talk about it before retreat, and we'd say, none of us had anything to complain about, or
Right.
to, you know, so but that was the kind of review that it was getting kind of continuously. It wasn't the big
I mean,
10,
I
think
will
it was
tell you,
10 years is
I mean, the amendment of charters is one of the things that's actually governed by the Ohio Constitution. It says how to amend, it says how you can create a charter to start with, and then it says how you can amend it. And there are only two ways that it can be initiated. One is by petition of people, and that's what you saw
last year.
yeah, right, in November. The other is by council.
Mhm.
Council, whenever they want to, could submit a charter amendment on the ballot, whether this body ever met or not. I represent Mason. They have 2 charter amendments on the ballot coming up in November. They didn't have a charter review commission.
Mhm.
They don't have any, in fact, I'm not sure they even have their charter about that. There are other communities that say if council wants to submit charter amendments to the ballot, they have to submit them to a charter review commission first, to have it vetted out in a charter review commission. I'm not sure that that's really keeping with the Constitution, because the Constitution says that the legislative body has the authority to submit that to the ballot, whether the commission likes it or not. So, but to answer your question, yes, there are communities that have time limits. There are some communities that don't. There are some communities that don't even have the concept of a charter review commission in their charter.
Okay. Anything else?
Before you adjourn, would you reiterate the next 2 meetings, so I make
Next
sure I
two-
have it right?
Okay, next 2 meetings, and this is tentative, I will confirm, I need to say that, but,
Okay.
October 9th, Tuesday, October 9th at 7 p.m. And, I think we can have council chambers that night. And then Saturday, the 27th at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Before you adjourn, one last thing from you.
me.
And you mentioned I used to be a high school teacher.
Yeah.
And I learned one trick then, and that is when you have handouts, don't pass them out before, or everyone will just read the handout and not listen to you while you're talking. So one of the things I brought with me, which I'm gonna give to you, and you can do whatever you want with it, but, and this isn't anything I created, it's from a publication called the Village Officer's Handbook. It's chapter 1 of that Village Officer's Handbook, and it's about home rule, and it talks about some of the differences about powers of local self-government versus police power, what your charter can do, and if you don't have a charter, it's yours to do whatever you want with, but I figured if I gave it to you before,
You wouldn't have listened?
you might not listen to me.
You're
And
right.
that's the worst thing for a teacher.
That's right, that's absolutely right.
I got you beat, I didn't have
Doodling
it
on
that
your
way,
handout.
All right. Jeff, we really appreciate your taking time to prepare for this and to be here, and I hope your kids are in one piece when you get
Oh,
home.
my wife's home already.
Oh,
That
okay.
was what that beef was.
I heard
My
the
wife-
beef, and
She's
but I didn't
home.
see you go into shock, so I was hoping, his
You
kids
need to
are,
relax.
his kids are alone.
Left our
for
kids
the
at home for the
Kids
first time.
around the house.
Yeah, that's what I was made, probably my wife texted me saying.
Did I do that?
I have a last question for you.
Yes.
We are talking about information gathering,
Yes.
and we were talking about who else we wanted to talk to,
Yes.
and I think somebody here mentioned we said Chief Doyle, and somebody mentioned, the fire chief. And because the fire department is not, you know, officially, under the jurisdiction of, they're a contract to us, I'm not sure whether we want to invite Tony or not, you know, I mean, I'm on the fence about that, and I need to make a decision quickly.
It's, I think it's up to you, because what your charter says right now is that the village shall provide, police and fire service as, you know, as deemed appropriate or
Right.
something.
Yeah, that was so like
It's a-
just.
And the
Yeah.
mechanics are up to the
Little.
village.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's one,
Yeah.
exactly, that's one
A
of
lot
those
of detail
times where
on
it
that
says,
one.
Right.
the charter says, yeah, you should provide police and fire service.
And we do by
Adequate is what they
contract.
would.
Adequately, and then
What determines what's adequate?
council, and really, they might not wanna hear this, then the people. Because if the people say it's not
It's not
adequate,
adequate,
they'll,
okay.
Mhm.
you know, that's sort of the process, you know. If the people say it's not adequate, then they vote out the people that think it is.
Well, I'm tempted to, I mean, because they're linked to us so closely, and because Tony is, I've been on committees with him, I chaired the safety committee, and, he always had good insights. He was, he's a resident, and so I really think he has a good mind.
Tony is
Can't
very
hurt,
good minded,
you know.
he's a very good family man, he loves this village like all of us
There's
do.
nothing
He would
wrong
be
with
with us.
information.
Well, that's what I'm just.
And he would
Can't hurt
also,
anything,
he would
yeah.
also
If he's got
serve
the
our,
time.
our rules about he wouldn't speak unless he was
Right,
asked to
well,
speak.
he knows the rules, I mean,
Yeah.
he's on all of
I would-
them,
I
he's
would
on our
definitely
boards
be
and
There's,
stuff, so.
you know, you can't go wrong with more information
Okay.
in a process
Well,
like
he
this.
will
Now,
be,
you may hear it all and then decide, you know what, the village shall provide fire service adequately.
And that's all we need to
is, you may
say,
That's maybe all we need.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
What you gotta do is just ask the board if we can vote yes or no. If you have a question whether you should or shouldn't.
We did talk about it.
Yeah, just throw it to the board, and
Yeah,
the
we
board
did
can say
talk
yes or
about
no, and then that way, you know, the board's made a decision, and you're home
Right.
free.
Right, okay. And before we go, Thad missed our orientation, our initial meeting, which I was very sorry about, because I had his wrong email address, and so he was inadvertently cheated. And so, everybody, it's right now.
I think it's right, I've gotten the last couple.
He looked.
I handed it around, he wasn't here when I passed it around.
But everybody go around
correct, that's
and give your name, please, and a little bit about, you know, what you've done in the village, or what you do now, and how long you've lived in the village, and just enough to help him kind of hear what we did, you know, hear what everybody else heard. So, Dave, you wanna start?
Okay, well, he knows me, and I've been here since '72, and
Yeah, we go back a
the rest is
couple
history.
years.
Okay. Ken?
Ken Huff, we moved here 7 years ago, October 1st of '05, and I work at Maple Knoll Village and understand not-for-profits, but not city government, so here we are.
I'm Thad Willard, I'm a semi-retired attorney. Most of my practice now is limited to what we call appellate work. I do a lot of appellate work for the 12th District Court of Appeals, and for some reason they've been sending me nothing but murder cases the last 5 months. And, hey, it's the way, part of the game. But other than that, I try to enjoy what retirement I've got here and cause a minimum amount of trouble, although some people may disagree with that. And just that's about it.
And he lives on Damon Road.
Yeah, I've got a relative that's on council.
And you know who I am. I'm Chris
Right.
Visnich, and I lived here for 40 years and been on council 14 years, and I'm trying to retire. Okay.
I'm Mick Brown, I live on Dayspring. I've lived here since my first year of birth, and that's 65 years, 65 years I've lived here.
Don't make yourself
As a
over there.
firefighter for 23 years, been involved with the old Civic Foundation and all kinds of things, and that's been my contribution. I've been asked to run for council, and that's just not my bag. But I love this town, this little village, very much. My wife's a coal miner's daughter, and right now, if we would get a divorce, I'd have to leave because she loves this town as much as I do. And that's it.
And you were on the original charter committee.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Well, I think everybody saw that.
Yeah.
So.
You are the same person.
I am.
He grew
I'm
up
the
on,
same
he
person as
grew up on
Michael.
my street. He grew up on my street,
Yeah,
yeah.
my real name's Michael, but I've been Nick or Mickey since when
Since
I
you were
went
two.
to Roger Bacon, it was an all-boys school, I gotta change it, you know, and as soon as somebody from Greenhills saw me and, hey, Mickey, and it just went. So I settled on Michael, and Mike is fine, so.
Okay. Heidi?
Well, I'm Heidi Rasmussen, and we've met at a few open mic nights, I think. And your wife and you, my husband and I live on Junedale, and I have run a business, preschool out of my home, and we've lived here, well, since 1980, in the village.
Tricia and Murray, I live in Ireland, and we know each other,
That-
definitely.
And again, I apologize for not being here the last session. It's, for once I can say it was not my fault.
That's right.
Not your fault, should we be, not your fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for being late. Now, I was headed to two places at once. I want to make one last statement to the zoning commission before I bounced over here.
I'll watch it on,
All right.
watch it on TV.
I think we are adjourned, unless
Well,
anybody has
Do
any
we
more.
have
I
any
would-
homework for next week? Just-
That's what I was suggesting.
No, okay.
The idea of doing this
I
systematically.
think that was a good suggestion.
I think it's what Jeff gave us is a good idea of assigning one or two articles for us to go over and discuss those at the next meeting.
We aren't going to the next meeting. That these meetings, these first two meetings are information gathering.
Okay.
And I'm wanting us to get the same information, other than we all come from different experience
Right.
and different levels of experience. So I'm trying to get us to hear the same thing from the same people and have the same questions, we get them out, so we can hear each other and begin gathering information. And then we will, in a very orderly way, approach going through the charter and reviewing it. So that's.
Yeah, I don't want a
ahead.
shotgun approach.
It won't be, it will
Okay.
not be, I guarantee it.
So we don't want to start a strategy.
No.
No. And right now, you know, I will reiterate for Doug's sake that although these are open meetings, we will not be entertaining any dialogue. They are strictly visitors, they can observe, but we will not entertain any questions, comments, or any involvement in our meetings. And if there's any suggestions or questions or comments that people would like to make, they will be doing that in writing and leaving it for us to review at the municipal building. We'll review those each meeting. And then about 3/4 of the way through this, we're gonna have a public hearing. So there'll be one opportunity for anybody that wants to talk to us. But this is an assignment we have that is a job to do for the village. And it's one that I think that takes some information and some expertise as we can build it. And I think people will have some difficulty understanding where that ceiling is and where it becomes minutia that's supposed to be from council and administration on down. And so we need to keep focused on that, and we will do that.
And the clock is running because we got 6 months, well, 5
Well,
months.
one month,
Holidays
one month
are
is
gonna
gone.
be
stuck
One
in
month is
there.
gone.
So we got 5 months to get all this
Yeah,
done.
yep.
Goals
It's
to be done
not
by the
overwhelming to me
What?
at all.
Goals to be done by the holidays.
And I'll be
Right.
available, but you know, once Thanksgiving hits, then
Well,
people
that's
will.
true for all of us,
See
but
you.
we're gonna have to just
All right.
work through it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not me.